The conference room smelled of expensive leather and fresh coffee, the kind they never offered to people like me. I stood there in my work boots, dirt still under my fingernails from the morning's planting, surrounded by men in suits who couldn't tell a rose from a rhododendron. My name is Marcus Chun, and I'd been the head gardener at Thornhill Estate Management for 5 years. 5 years of waking up at 4 a.m. 5 years of calloused hands and sun-scorched skin. 5 years of making their luxury properties look like something out of a magazine while they took all the credit. Marcus, we're making some organizational changes. Richard Thornhill didn't even look up from his phone as he spoke. The CEO of Thornhill Estate Management, a man who inherited his father's company and his grandfather's arrogance. He sat at the head of the table, his $5,000 suit probably worth more than my entire truck. I'd been called into this meeting with no warning. No explanation. Just a curt email at 7 a.m. Conference room. 9 a.m. Mandatory. We've decided to outsource our landscaping division to cut costs, Richard continued, finally glancing up at me with the same look you'd give a piece of furniture you were throwing away. Your position is being eliminated effective immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow. 5 years. 5 years of loyalty, of going above and beyond, of treating those gardens like they were my own children. But the spring plantings, I managed to say, my voice barely steady. The Anderson estate renovation. The organic protocol I developed. All handled. Richard waved his hand dismissively. We're contracting with Chemlawn Pro. They can do in half the time what takes you weeks. Chemlawn uses harsh chemicals that will destroy the soil microbiome I've spent years building, I said, my voice rising despite myself. The organic protocols I created increased property values by an average of 15%. I have the data. Richard laughed. Actually laughed. And the other executives, David Chong, Jennifer Morrison, Tom Bradley, they all joined in. Like I'd told the funniest joke they'd ever heard. Organic protocols? Richard's voice dripped with condescension. Listen, Marcus. You're a gardener. You cut grass and plant flowers. We need real business solutions, not some hippie nonsense about soil microbes. He turned to the others. This is what happens when you let hired help think they're part of the strategic team. Hired help. Those 2 words would echo in my mind for months. I've increased client retention by 40% in my division, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. 3 clients specifically cited the garden transformations as their reason for renewing. And we appreciate your contribution, Jennifer Morrison cut in, her smile as fake as the plants in her office. But the reality is you're replaceable. We can hire 10 gardeners for what we're paying you, and they'll do exactly what they're told without trying to play scientist. Replaceable. Tom Bradley slid a manila envelope across the table. 2 weeks severance. Sign the NDA, and we'll add another week as a courtesy. An NDA? My hands shook as I picked up the envelope. For what? Standard procedure, David said. We can't have former employees talking about our business practices, client lists, or operational methods. I understood then. They weren't just firing me. They were erasing me. 5 years of innovation, of research, of building something extraordinary. And they wanted to make sure I couldn't even talk about it. The organic pest control formula I developed, I said slowly. That's mine. I created it on my own time, with my own resources. Actually, Richard pulled out another document. If you check your original employment contract, page 7, clause 14b, any innovations or developments created during your employment period belong to Thornhill Estate Management. So that formula, that's ours. We just don't plan to use it. The room spun. I'd spent 2 years developing that formula. Hundreds of hours testing combinations of botanical extracts, essential oils, and beneficial bacteria. I'd used my own money to buy supplies, my own weekends to run trials. And they were claiming ownership just to ensure I couldn't use it either. You can't. We can and we have. Sign the papers, Marcus. Or we'll make things very difficult for you in this industry. We know every major property management company in the state. One call from me, and you'll never work in luxury landscaping again. I looked around the room at their smug faces. These people who'd never gotten their hands dirty. Who'd never felt the satisfaction of nursing a dying garden back to life. Who'd never understood that what I did was art, was science, was love. Richard checked his watch, a Rolex that cost more than I made in 6 months. Are we done here? I have a tea time at 11. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like ice before it shatters completely. I picked up the pen. My hand hovered over the signature line. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the papers in their faces, to tell them exactly where they could shove their NDA and their severance package. But I had $3,247 in my bank account. I had rent due in 2 weeks. I had a mother in a nursing home whose Medicare didn't cover everything. I signed. Excellent. Richard stood up, already dismissing me from his mind. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. You have 30 minutes. 30 minutes? 5 years, and I got 30 minutes. Company policy. Jennifer's smile never wavered. We can't have terminated employees wandering the premises. The security escort was Frank, a good man who'd always treated me with respect. He couldn't meet my eyes as we walked to the maintenance building where I kept my office, a converted storage room that I'd transformed into something functional. I'm sorry, Marcus, Frank said quietly as I packed my few belongings into a cardboard box. This is wrong. My office. My notebooks filled with observations, sketches, formulas. Photos of successful garden transformations. A coffee mug that said "World's Best Gardener," that my nephew had given me. A small jade plant I'd been nurturing for 3 years. I reached for my research journals. 5 notebooks containing every observation, every test result, every iteration of the formula I'd developed. Can't take those, Frank said apologetically. Mr. Thornhill specified. All notebooks and records stay. Company property. These are my personal. I know. I'm sorry. I'm just doing what I'm told. Of course he was. We all were. That's what people like Richard Thornhill counted on, that the rest of us would just follow orders, just accept our place, just be grateful for whatever scraps they threw our way. I left the notebooks. But in my pocket, I had something they didn't know about, a small USB drive where I'd backed up my digital notes 6 months ago. Just a habit, nothing intentional. But now it felt like fate. The walk to my truck was the longest of my life. It was 9:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in April. The gardens I'd cultivated were in full spring bloom. The roses I'd grafted were showing their first buds. The organic lawn care protocol I'd implemented was creating the healthiest turf I'd ever seen. And I would never see any of it again. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel. Through the windshield, I could see Richard Thornhill walking to his Mercedes, laughing on his phone. Probably telling someone about the gardener he'd just fired. Probably making it into a funny story about putting the help in their place. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother's care facility. Just a reminder, payment for next month is due by the 1st. I looked at my bank balance. $3,247. The nursing home cost $4,500 a month. My rent was $1,200. My truck payment was $380. The math didn't work anymore. I drove home in a daze. My apartment was a studio in the cheaper part of town, clean but cramped, with a small balcony where I kept container gardens. Those plants had been my therapy, my joy, my experiments. I sat on that balcony and I cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I cried for the humiliation, for the injustice, for the sheer helplessness of it all. I'd played by their rules. I'd worked harder than anyone. I'd been loyal and dedicated and excellent at my job. And none of it mattered. Because to them, I was just the help. Replaceable. Disposable. Beneath notice. But as I sat there, surrounded by my plants, something shifted. The crack in me widened, and through it, something new began to emerge. Not despair. Not acceptance. Rage. Cold, calculating, patient rage. The first week after being fired, I applied to 43 jobs. Landscaping companies, garden centers, even retail positions at Home Depot. I'd take anything. Anything to keep the lights on and my mother in her care facility. 37 never responded. Sent automated rejection emails. 2 called me in for interviews. The first interview was at Greenscape Solutions, a mid-sized landscaping company. The owner, a man named Bill Patterson, seemed impressed with my resume until he made a phone call. Let me just check some references, he said, stepping out of the office. When he came back, his whole demeanor had changed. Cold. Distant. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen. We've decided to go in a different direction. Can I ask why? A minute ago you said my experience was exactly what you needed. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, off the record? I called a colleague who does business with Thornhill Estate Management. Word is you were fired for insubordination and trying to steal proprietary information. I can't take that risk. Richard Thornhill's threat hadn't been empty. He was actively blacklisting me. The second interview ended the same way. Different company, same result. One phone call, and suddenly I went from qualified candidate to liability. By week 2, my savings account showed $1,847. I'd paid my mother's care facility, and the rest went to rent and minimum payments on my credit cards. I was eating ramen noodles and rice. I stopped driving except when necessary to save gas money. My mother called me, her voice weak but concerned. "Marcus, honey, they're saying there's an issue with next month's payment. Did something happen?" "Everything's fine, Mom. Just a banking error. I'll sort it out." I was lying to my mother. That's what rock bottom feels like, when you have to lie to the one person who's always believed in you. I started looking at job postings outside my field. Warehouse work, delivery driver, night shift at a grocery store, anything that would pay the bills. But every night, I came back to my balcony garden, to my plants, to my notebooks, the ones I'd kept at home, not at work, to the USB drive with my research. I'd pull up the files and read through them. Years of work. Observations about how certain botanical compounds affected pest populations. How beneficial bacteria could strengthen plant immune systems. How the right combination of essential oils could repel insects without harming pollinators. My formula, the one Thornhill Estate Management claimed to own but had no intention of using, was revolutionary. I knew it was. I'd tested it on every property I managed. It worked better than conventional pesticides, cost less over time, and was completely safe for children and pets. But what could I do with it? I had no money to manufacture it. No business experience. No connections. And if I tried to sell it, Richard Thornhill would sue me into oblivion. Week 3, I got a job at a warehouse. Night shift, $15 an hour, loading boxes onto trucks. It was honest work, but it wasn't my work. I'd come home at 6 a.m., my back aching, my hands cramped, and I'd look at my plants and feel like I'd betrayed them somehow. During my breaks, sitting in the warehouse break room with the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, I'd scroll through social media. That was a mistake, because there on Instagram was Thornhill Estate Management's official account, posting photos of their properties. Gardens I'd created, designs I'd implemented, and in the captions, "Our award-winning horticulture team delivers excellence." Not a single mention of my name. Not a hint that any of those gardens existed because of my work. And the comments were full of praise for Richard Thornhill's vision and commitment to quality. I wanted to comment, to tell everyone the truth. But the NDA I'd signed had teeth. $50,000 in damages for any violation. I couldn't risk it. Then I saw it. A new post. Exciting updates coming to the Anderson Estate. Complete renovation with our new partners at ChemLawn Pro. The Anderson Estate. My masterpiece. 3 years of work transforming a neglected property into a sustainable ecosystem. Native plants that supported local pollinators. A pond system that managed rainwater runoff. Soil so healthy it practically hummed with life. And they were going to let ChemLawn Pro tear it all apart with their chemical treatments. I called Mrs. Anderson. She'd always been kind to me, treated me like a person rather than staff. "Marcus, I heard what happened. It's absolutely terrible. Richard Thornhill should be ashamed. Mrs. Anderson, please don't let them use ChemLawn on your property. The chemicals will destroy everything we built. Give me 2 weeks to find another position, and I'll maintain it privately." "Oh, Marcus, I wish I could. But my contract is with Thornhill Estate Management, not with individual contractors. The legal fees to break it would be enormous." "I'm so sorry." Another door closed. Another piece of my heart ripped out. Week 4, I saw the photos. ChemLawn Pro had started work on the Anderson Estate. The native plant meadow I'd spent 2 years establishing, torn out and replaced with standard turf grass. The pond ecosystem, filled in and paved over for a modern water feature. The healthy, chemical-free soil, saturated with synthetic fertilizers and broad-spectrum pesticides. I sat on my balcony that night, staring at my phone, looking at those photos, and something in me finally shattered completely. I pulled out a notebook, not a fancy journal, just a cheap spiral-bound thing from the dollar store, and I started writing. Not notes about plants, not observations about soil health. A plan. If Richard Thornhill and his company could destroy my work, my reputation, and my livelihood, then I would return the favor. But I wouldn't do it through lawsuits or complaints. I wouldn't play by their rules. I would beat them at their own game. I would take everything they took from me and build it into something so successful, so undeniable, that they would have no choice but to watch as I rose above them. And then, when I had the power, I would take everything from them the way they took everything from me. But first, I needed to figure out how a broke former gardener with $847 in his bank account and a warehouse job was going to build a $1 million company. The answer came from an unexpected place. A YouTube video at 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep, hadn't been sleeping well for weeks, so I was scrolling through my phone, watching random content to quiet my mind. An ad played for some entrepreneur's course about building a business with no money. Normally I'd skip it, but I was desperate enough to watch. The guy in the video said something that stuck with me. You don't need money to start. You need a solution to a problem that people will pay for. I had a solution. The organic pest control formula that Thornhill Estate Management claimed ownership of, but had never patented, never manufactured, never even tested beyond my own field trials. I spent the next 3 nights researching intellectual property law at the public library during my warehouse breaks. What I learned changed everything. Thornhill Estate Management claimed ownership of my formula based on an employment contract clause about innovations. But they'd never filed a patent, never tried to commercialize it, never even documented it in their own records. And most crucially, I could prove I'd been working on it before I was hired, using notebooks I'd kept from my community college horticulture days. The formula was legally murky territory. They might claim it, but proving ownership in court would cost them hundreds of thousands in legal fees. And for what? A formula they'd explicitly said they'd never use? It was a risk. A huge risk. But it was the only card I had to play. I took my last $847 and bought supplies. Essential oils of neem, rosemary, and peppermint. A bacterial culture of Bacillus subtilis. Containers. Labels I printed at the library. I mixed small batches in my apartment kitchen, using the precise ratios I'd refined over 2 years. The product was beautiful. A golden brown liquid that smelled faintly of herbs and earth. Completely non-toxic. Incredibly effective. I called it Green Guard. Now I needed customers. But I had no money for advertising, no website, no business license. I was a guy with some bottles of organic pest control mixed in his apartment kitchen. I started small. I went to the farmer's market that Saturday and set up a folding table with a hand-painted sign. Natural pest control, safe for kids, pets, and earth, $20. In 6 hours, I sold 3 bottles. Made $60. Lost money when I factored in the farmer's market booth fee. But one of those 3 customers was a woman named Carol Stevens. She came back the next week. "That stuff you sold me?" she said, her eyes wide. "It's incredible. I've had aphids destroying my roses for 3 years. Tried everything. One application of your product, and they're gone. How does it work?" I explained the science, how the essential oils disrupted insect pheromone communication while the bacteria outcompete harmful organisms. How it was preventative and curative. How it actually improved plant health rather than just killing pests. "You need to sell this online," Carol said. "My daughter-in-law runs an organic lifestyle blog. She's always looking for products like this. Can I give her your information?" I gave her my phone number. I didn't have a website or even a business email. Just my personal cell phone. 3 days later, a woman named Jennifer Stevens, different Jennifer from the one at Thornhill Estate Management, called me. "My mother-in-law Carol won't stop talking about your pest control product. I run a blog called Green Living Daily. About 50,000 followers. Would you be interested in sending me a sample to review?" Would I be interested? I nearly dropped my phone. Absolutely. But I should be upfront. This is a very small operation right now. I'm mixing batches in my apartment. Jennifer laughed. "That's perfect. My audience loves small batch, handmade products. Send me a bottle and your story. People don't just buy products, they buy stories. My story. The story of a gardener fired for trying to do things right. Humiliated by corporate executives who valued profits over sustainability. Building something new from nothing. But I couldn't tell that story. The NDA prevented me from bad-mouthing Thornhill Estate Management. So I told a different version. A story about a horticulturist who believed in sustainable solutions. Who spent years developing a formula that worked with nature instead of against it. Who was starting a company to make organic gardening accessible to everyone. All of it was true. I just left out the parts about Richard Thornhill. I sent Jennifer a bottle of Green Guard and a handwritten note explaining the science and the mission. Then I waited. 1 week later, my phone exploded. Jennifer Stevens had posted a review on her blog. The only pest control you'll ever need, and it's actually good for your garden. The post went viral in the organic gardening community. Her followers started asking where they could buy it. She directed them to my phone number because I didn't have any other way for people to reach me. I got 43 calls that first day. People wanting to buy Green Guard, asking if I shipped nationwide, wanting to know if it worked on specific pests. I was still working night shift at the warehouse. I'd answer calls during my breaks, take orders on a notepad, then spend my days mixing batches and shipping them out in recycled boxes from the warehouse dumpster. In 2 weeks, I sold 137 bottles at $20 each. That's $2,740. After materials and shipping, I cleared about $1,200 profit. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Real, tangible hope. I used that money to buy better supplies in bulk. Created a simple website using a free template. Set up a business PayPal account. Printed professional labels. Word spread through organic gardening forums and social media. Jennifer Stevens posted an update. Still using Green Guard. Still incredible. This is not a paid promotion. I just genuinely love this product. That authenticity was gold. In a world of paid influencer ads, a genuine recommendation from a trusted source was worth more than any marketing budget. By the end of month 2, I'd sold 400 bottles. Revenue of $8,000. Profit of about $3,500 after materials, shipping, and fees. I quit the warehouse job. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I was betting everything on Green Guard. I moved production from my apartment kitchen to a rented commercial kitchen space, the kind that small food businesses use. It cost $500 a month, but it was legal and proper and let me scale production. Month 3, I sold 850 bottles. Revenue of $17,000. I hired my first employee, a kid named. I should have felt triumphant. This was the beginning of Richard Thornhill's downfall. Everything I'd been working toward. But what I felt was something colder. More focused. This wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. Richard Thornhill had humiliated me in front of his executives. Had called me replaceable. Had blacklisted me in the industry. Had tried to take ownership of my work and then buried it out of spite. Taking some of his clients wasn't revenge. It was just business. Real revenge would be taking everything. And I was just getting started. Month 12 marked a turning point. Green Guard wasn't just a product anymore. It was becoming a movement. Revenue hit $800,000 per month. We were in 200 stores across 15 states. Our subscription service had 5,000 members. We'd launched a professional-grade line for commercial landscapers that was gaining serious traction. But I wasn't satisfied, because every time I checked Thornhill Estate Management's website, they were still in business. Wounded but operating. Richard Thornhill was still the CEO. Still collecting his salary. Still living in his mansion. One morning, David Park called me with an opportunity. Marcus, we've been approached by Landscape Pro Distribution. They're interested in acquiring Green Guard. They're offering $8 million. $8 million. For a company I'd started with $847 9 months ago. That's incredible, I said. But I'm not interested in selling. I didn't think you would be. But hear me out. What if instead of selling Green Guard, you used it as a platform to build something bigger? What do you mean? You've proven that organic solutions can compete with conventional products. But you're still just one product competing against an entire industry. What if you became the alternative to that industry? The idea crystallized in my mind. Not just a product company. An entire ecosystem of organic property management solutions. Over the next 2 months, with Summit Ventures' support and additional funding, we made 3 strategic acquisitions. First, a small organic fertilizer company in Oregon. Their products were excellent, but their marketing was terrible. We rebranded them under the Green Guard umbrella and immediately saw sales triple. Second, a sustainable irrigation systems manufacturer in Colorado. Water conservation was becoming increasingly important, especially in drought-prone regions. Third, and most satisfyingly, we hired away Thornhill Estate Management's best field supervisor, a woman named Patricia Rodriguez who'd been marginalized and underpaid for years. She knew everything about their operations, their clients, their weaknesses. We launched Green Guard Property Services. Full-service organic property management. Everything that Thornhill Estate Management did, but with sustainable solutions and treated our employees like human beings. Patricia led the team. We poached 8 more of Thornhill's best people, gardeners, supervisors, client relations staff, by offering better pay, equity options, and respect. The message spread through the industry. There was an alternative. You didn't have to work for people who treated you like disposable help. Within 3 months, GreenGuard Property Services had signed 30 clients. Within 6 months, 75. We were cherry-picking Thornhill's best accounts, the ones who cared about sustainability and quality. Revenue across all GreenGuard divisions hit $2 million per month. We employed 85 people. We were growing fast, but more importantly, we were building something sustainable, ironically enough. And then came the call I'd been waiting for. Mrs. Anderson, the client whose property had been destroyed by Chemlon Pro after I was fired. Marcus, I don't know if you remember me. Mrs. Anderson, of course I remember. I made a terrible mistake. Thornhill Estate Management destroyed everything you built on my property. It's been killing me watching it deteriorate. I heard you started your own company. Can you fix what they ruined? Could I? That property had been my masterpiece. My proof that organic methods could create something extraordinary. Yes, I said. I can fix it. It'll take time. We're essentially starting over. But yes, whatever it costs. I don't care. I want it back the way you had it. The way it should be. We signed the contract the next day. Patricia and I personally oversaw the restoration. It took 4 months, but we brought that property back to life. Native plants, healthy soil, thriving ecosystem. And we documented everything. Time-lapse videos, before and after photos, testimonials from Mrs. Anderson about the difference between chemical and organic approaches. It became our flagship case study. Proof that organic property management wasn't just viable, it was superior. More clients followed. Every time we landed a former Thornhill client, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Not joy, exactly. Something colder. More methodical. I was dismantling Richard Thornhill's empire piece by piece. Every client that left him. Every employee we hired away. Every article praising GreenGuard's approach while implicitly criticizing conventional methods. Month 18, we hit $3 million in monthly revenue. The company was valued at $45 million in our series of funding round. Summit Ventures brought in 2 more investment firms, and we raised an additional $10 million to accelerate expansion. I was 32 years old. 18 months ago, I'd been fired and humiliated. Now I was the CEO of a company worth $45 million. But I still wasn't satisfied, because Richard Thornhill was still out there. And I wanted him to know, really know, that I was coming for everything he had. The industry conference was held at the Waterfront Grand Hotel, the kind of place with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. The annual Luxury Property Management Summit, where all the major players gathered to network and show off. 2 years ago, I would have been setting up the flower arrangements. Now, I was a keynote speaker. The future of sustainable property management was my topic. The organizers had been thrilled when I accepted. GreenGuard had become the industry's fastest-growing company, and everyone wanted to understand how we'd done it. I saw him as soon as I entered the conference hall. Richard Thornhill, standing with a group of executives, drinking scotch, laughing at someone's joke. He looked older than I remembered. More tired. The laugh lines around his eyes had deepened into stress lines. He hadn't seen me yet. I could have avoided him. Should have, probably. The professional thing would be to stay focused on my presentation, network with potential clients, and ignore his existence. But I wasn't feeling professional. I walked straight toward his group. Each step felt deliberate, purposeful. Jennifer Morrison saw me first. Her champagne glass actually slipped in her hand, and she had to catch it. She whispered something to Richard. He turned. Our eyes met. For a moment, just a flicker, I saw recognition. Then confusion. Then something that might have been understanding. Richard, I said, extending my hand. It's been a while. He stared at my hand like it was a snake. The executives around him had gone silent, sensing the tension. Marcus, I heard you started a company. GreenGuard. We're doing well. Actually, I believe we signed 3 of your former clients last quarter. The Henderson Estate, Park Avenue Properties, and... I pretended to think. Oh, right. The Lakewood Development Group. They said something about wanting more sustainable practices. Richard's jaw tightened. Competition is healthy. It is. Though I imagine it's less healthy when you're losing. How is business, by the way? I saw that article about the investigation into your chemical usage practices. Has that been resolved? Jennifer Morrison stepped forward. Marcus, this isn't the place. Isn't it? This is an industry conference. We're all here to discuss the future of property management. I'm just curious about how conventional chemical-based approaches plan to adapt to changing market demands. You have a lot of nerve, Richard said, his voice low and dangerous. After everything. After everything? I let the words hang. Please, Richard. Finish that thought. After everything, what? After you fired me and tried to blacklist me? After you claimed ownership of my work and then buried it? After you called me replaceable hired help? The executives around us were frozen. This was better than any reality TV drama. Richard's face had gone red. I made you. You learned everything at my company. You made me? I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Richard, you destroyed me. Or you tried to. The only thing you made was a mistake. You had someone talented and dedicated working for you, and you threw them away because your ego couldn't handle the idea that a gardener might be smarter than you. I threw you away because you were insubordinate and I was innovative. I was passionate. I was trying to build something excellent. And you couldn't stand it because it wasn't your idea. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. But here's the thing, Richard. You didn't destroy me. You freed me. Because now I'm not working for you. I'm competing with you. And I'm winning. You arrogant. Am I wrong? Check the numbers. GreenGuard's revenue grew 400% last year. How did Thornhill Estate Management do? Oh, wait, you're down 30%, aren't you? Lost how many clients? 15? 20. Richard's hand was shaking around his scotch glass. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. But you're still just a gardener playing businessman. This industry will chew you up and spit you out. Maybe. Or maybe the industry is changing, and you're too stuck in your old ways to see it. Either way, I'll enjoy watching from the top. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Richard? That organic protocol you claimed ownership of? The one you said was worthless? That's the foundation of a $45 million company now. Just thought you should know what you threw away. I walked away before he could respond. My hands were shaking, adrenaline, anger, satisfaction all mixed together. Patricia caught up with me near the bar. Boss, that was either the most badass thing I've ever seen or the most reckless. Maybe both. Probably both, I admitted. But it needed to happen. He looked like he wanted to kill you. Good. Let him be angry. Let him feel what I felt. Let him know that I'm not going away. I'm just getting started. My keynote speech that afternoon was standing room only. I talked about sustainable practices, about treating employees with respect, about building businesses that valued more than just profit. But mostly I talked about resilience, about being knocked down and choosing to get back up, about taking rejection and turning it into fuel. I didn't mention Richard Thornhill by name. I didn't have to. Everyone in that room knew the story. The fired gardener who built an empire. The underdog who became the competition. After the speech, I was swarmed with people wanting to talk. Potential clients. Investors. Industry reporters. Job seekers who wanted to work for a company that valued them. And across the room, I could see Richard Thornhill leaving early, his shoulders hunched, his executives trailing behind him like a funeral procession. That image, Richard Thornhill walking away defeated, diminished, should have been enough. But it wasn't. Part 7. The final move, minutes 52 to 58. 6 months after the conference, GreenGuard was operating in 35 states. Revenue hit $5 million per month. We employed 250 people. We'd become the largest organic property management company in the country. And Thornhill Estate Management was dying. The investigation into their chemical usage had resulted in hefty fines. More clients had left. Their stock price, they'd gone public years ago, had dropped 60%. They were bleeding money and relevance. I tracked it all. Every quarterly report. Every client departure. Every negative article. Sarah noticed. You're obsessed with them, she said one day, looking at the Thornhill Estate Management stock chart on my monitor. I'm monitoring the competition. Marcus, they're not competition anymore. They're a failing company. We've moved past them. She was right, but she didn't understand. This wasn't about business anymore. Maybe it never had been. Then David Park called with news that changed everything. Marcus, Thornhill Estate Management is for sale. The board is forcing Richard Thornhill out. They're looking for a buyer to either acquire the whole company or merge with a competitor. My heart stopped. For sale? They're in bad shape. Debt-heavy, outdated infrastructure, damaged reputation. But they still have some valuable assets, a few loyal clients, some decent property contracts, brand recognition among older demographics. What's the asking price? They want $15 million. But honestly, I think they'd take $10 million just to get out from under the debt. $10 million. To buy the company that had destroyed me. We have the cash, I said slowly. The Series A gave us runway for acquisitions. We do. But Marcus, is this strategic or personal? Both. Can it be both? David was quiet for a moment. If you buy Thornhill Estate Management, what would you do with it? Good question. What would I do? I could shut it down. Liquidate everything. Erase Richard Thornhill's legacy completely. Or I could do something better. I'd transform it, I said. Convert their entire operation to organic methods. Retrain their remaining employees, or help them find new positions. Merge their valuable contracts into Green Guard Property Services. And I'd keep the Thornhill name, as a subsidiary that represents what sustainable property management should be. You'd save the company Richard Thornhill built while removing him from it completely. Exactly. He destroyed my life because he thought I was replaceable. I'm going to save his life's work and make it better than he ever could. That's the real revenge. That's also good business. Their client contracts alone are worth $5 million. Plus, we'd eliminate a competitor and gain market share. Over the next month, we negotiated. Thornhill Estate Management's board was desperate. They countered at $12 million. We offered $9 million. They accepted $10 million. The deal closed on a Friday in March, 2 years and 11 months after I'd been fired. The press release went out Monday morning. Green Guard acquires Thornhill Estate Management, plans complete sustainability conversion. Industry publications called it the acquisition of the year. A David and Goliath story. The fired employee who came back to buy his former company. But the moment I'd been waiting for came Tuesday afternoon. Richard Thornhill called me. My assistant said he was on the line, asked if I wanted to take it. Put him through. Marcus. His voice was hollow, defeated. Richard, you bought my company. I did. Why? You already won. You built something successful. Why do this? I leaned back in my chair. The CEO's chair of a company worth over $60 million. Do you remember what you said to me? That I was replaceable? That I was just hired help playing scientist? Silence. You took everything from me, Richard. My job. My reputation. My dignity. You tried to take my work and bury it out of spite. You made sure I couldn't find another job in this industry. You wanted to destroy me completely. I was wrong. I see that now. You were wrong. But more than that, you were cruel. You enjoyed it. That's what I couldn't forgive. You enjoyed putting me in my place. So this is revenge? You bought my company for revenge. No. I bought your company because it was a good business decision. The revenge is that you have to live with the knowledge that everything you built, your father's legacy, your grandfather's legacy, survives only because the gardener you fired was better at business than you ever were. I heard him take a shaky breath. What now? Now. You're out. The board already accepted your resignation as part of the acquisition terms. But I'm not cruel like you, Richard. Your severance package is fair. And I'll make sure the Thornhill name continues in the industry as a brand that represents sustainable excellence. Your family's legacy won't be destroyed. It'll just be better. He struggled for words. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. But if you want my advice, take some time. Figure out who you are when you're not standing on other people. Maybe become someone better. I hung up before he could respond. 3 months later, I stood in what used to be Richard Thornhill's office. We'd converted the Thornhill Estate Management headquarters into Green Guard's East Coast Operations Center. The mahogany desk was gone, replaced with a standing desk made from reclaimed wood. The leather chairs were now ergonomic seats. The wall where Richard's diplomas had hung now displayed photos of our team members and their families. Patricia walked in, tablet in hand. Boss, the conversion is complete. All former Thornhill properties are now on organic protocols. We've retrained 85% of their remaining staff. The 15% who didn't want to adapt, we helped them find positions with other companies. And the clients? 92% retention rate. Better than we projected. Turns out when you actually deliver quality and communicate clearly, people stay loyal. I looked out the window at the city below. 2 years ago, I'd stood in a different office in this building, getting fired and humiliated. Now I own the building. How are you feeling? Patricia asked. You got everything you wanted. The revenge is complete. Was it? I'd bought the company. I'd proven Richard Thornhill wrong about everything. I'd built something bigger and better than he ever had. But standing there, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. And maybe a little empty. You know what's weird? I said. I spent almost 3 years focused on beating him. On proving him wrong. On making him regret what he did. And now that it's done, I'm not sure what I was really chasing. Vindication? Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to matter. To prove that I wasn't replaceable. That I had value. Marcus, you employ 400 people. You've built a company that's changing an entire industry. You've proven sustainable practices can be profitable. That's more than vindication. That's legacy. She was right. But the truth was the best parts of the last 3 years had nothing to do with Richard Thornhill. The best parts were watching Tommy, my first employee, grow into a production manager. Seeing Patricia build a team that actually enjoyed coming to work. Getting letters from customers about how GreenGuard products helped them create beautiful gardens without worrying about their kids and pets. The best parts were paying off my mother's care facility. Giving equity to employees who built this company with me. Creating jobs that treated people with dignity and respect. The best parts had nothing to do with revenge. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Are you coming for dinner Sunday? I'm making your favorite. I smiled. Yeah, Patricia. I think I'm good. Actually, I'm better than good. So what now? You've conquered your white whale. What's next for Marcus Chen? I thought about it. We keep growing, but smartly. We don't sacrifice quality or values for size. We take care of our people. We keep proving that doing things right can be profitable. And maybe I stop checking what Richard Thornhill is doing every day. That would be healthy. Also, I want to start a foundation. Scholarships for horticulture students. Grants for sustainable agriculture research. Training programs for people who want to enter the green industry. Give other people the opportunities one had to fight for. Patricia grinned. That's perfect. The fired gardener who became a philanthropist. Just a guy who got knocked down and learned how to get back up. That's all. But even as I said it, I knew it was more than that. Getting knocked down was the easy part. Anyone can fail. Anyone can be humiliated and rejected. The hard part, the part that mattered, was what you did next. Did you let it destroy you? Or did you let it forge you into something stronger? Richard Thornhill had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd given me the greatest gift of my life. The motivation to become more than I ever imagined I could be. Epilogue. 5 years after being fired, GreenGuard is valued at $200 million. We operate in all 50 states and 3 international markets. We employ over 1,000 people. Richard Thornhill? I heard he started consulting for small businesses, teaching them how to avoid the mistakes he made. Apparently, he's good at it. Humble. A better man than he was. I ran into him once at a coffee shop. We nodded at each other. Didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because here's what I finally understood. The revenge wasn't buying his company. The revenge wasn't becoming more successful. The revenge wasn't even proving him wrong. The revenge was that I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd built something beautiful. Something meaningful. Something that helped people and changed an industry and gave opportunities to others who'd been overlooked and underestimated. That was enough. More than enough. I was Marcus Chen, former gardener, current CEO, future philanthropist, and I was no longer replaceable. I never was. Final message. If you've ever been fired, rejected, humiliated, or told you weren't good enough, this story is for you. Your value isn't determined by people who can't see it. Your worth isn't defined by those who dismiss you. Sometimes the greatest gift is being pushed out of a place that was too small for who you were meant to become. The gardener became a CEO not despite being fired, but because being fired forced him to plant seeds in his own garden instead of tending someone else's. What seeds are you planting today?